Film cameras are insanely expensive nowadays. This is something I quickly came to realize as I've been trying to shoot more film in the past year. So as someone who doesn't have the financial means to drop $250 on a Canon AE1, I instead decided to spend $28 on this, the Sunnylife Underwater Camera. And since I just got a roll back, I want to show you the photos that you can get from it and give a little review of the camera. Because if you want to get the film aesthetic, but you don't want to drop money on a vintage camera or a Lightroom preset, this might be the camera for you. So I'm not gonna lie, the camera itself looks and feels pretty cheap. If you rattle it around, you can hear noise. It's made of complete plastic. But if you factor in the underwater housing that it comes with, I don't think it's a bad deal at all. Especially because some single-use cameras that can't even go underwater are $20. You'll notice that the camera doesn't come with a flash. It only has this eyepiece up here, which is something to consider. If you're a photographer and you care about the specs, I believe the aperture would be around f9, which is what a typical disposable camera is, and the shutter speed probably sits around 1/100th. If you don't understand what I just said, basically you do not want to shoot in any lighting that isn't very bright and sunny. And if you're trying to shoot something that's moving fast, expect to get a little bit of blurring. However, I am pretty impressed with the photos that were shot in the right conditions. So with that, let's go through the roll. Firstly, I just want to say I'm not a film expert, so I don't know how much of the outcome was dependent on the type of film that I shot on, the camera that I used, or the film lab processing the film and their chemicals. So I'm just gonna kind of give my own explanation for why some of these photos turned out the way they did, but that might not be correct. So just take everything I say with a grain of salt. But just starting with the first, this lighting condition was on a sunny day. You can see the light coming in right here. But again, like I explained, if the lighting isn't super bright, either nothing will show up or it'll be very faint. This is my sister driving. Again, you can see just on the windshield, it was a very sunny day. Since the camera is a f9 camera, it should be able to see almost everything in the field of view, so nothing should really be blurry. However, I've found that if something is close enough to the camera, it will be blurred out, and I'll show you another example of this. But that's just something to keep in mind, because even though most of the stuff in the background is pretty in focus, she herself is pretty blurry. This is another sunny day. I think this is a of how it does well in really bright sun or really bright lighting. The image isn't even blown out, which means like the whites aren't so bright that you can't see the details in them. I think it preserved all of the light areas pretty well, but in those darker areas, you do see that it's very dark even for how sunny of a day it was. Again, this is Millie. I really like this photo. I think the colors are really nice. I love the greens. Composition-wise, it's not the best, but color-wise, I really like this image. Again, Millie, I shot this in a dark room with not optimal lighting, but it still came out. Another thing I noticed with this camera, for some reason, I would hold it like this, but for some reason, my finger somehow would get in the frame. I don't know if that's because the shutter speed was so slow and that I would move somehow and my finger would get it, but anyway, my finger's gonna be in some of these photos. If I zoom in, we can appreciate the rest of the image. I really like this photo. I think the colors came out beautifully. You can see some of the blurring, so I probably did move the camera, or that's just the lens itself is kind of blurry around the edges. But yeah, I think this is just a really pretty image color-wise. When I shot this, I was like, I don't know how this is gonna turn out, but I like it a lot if I crop out my finger. Millie, again, this is probably one of the better images that I took on this roll because everything is exposed pretty well. It shows that this camera is great if you're in sunny conditions. This is more of just like a test photo, really. I took this image because I wanted to see how the colors of the leaves would turn up. I like the colors. I think that they look really nice. But again, you can see the contrast between how the sunny part looks great, and then in the shadows, it's just like, don't shoot in the shadows. I like this photo a lot. I like the way her shadow came out. It's very dark. I like the way this orange of the flooring came out. I think that shows just the film aesthetic. I like how the colors came out. No good. Oh, I really like this photo. Kind of what I mentioned earlier, with this camera, you can't really shoot action if you care about getting everything very sharp just because of the settings. But I think that's kind of what comes with the film aesthetic. Like, it's okay if things are blurry. That's something you want to keep in mind. Okay, this is a great example of what I was talking about earlier with the photo of my sister was in the car. There's a certain distance where if it's close enough, it won't be in focus. Also, I think the framing on this was a little off. Like in my head, I want it to be closer. This is not in focus, everything else though is in focus. Color-wise, it's a nice photo. Execution-wise on framing, it's not the best. Really not much motion blur, even though her tail is wagging. I like taking photos in reflective surfaces, so that's what I try to do here. It is a little blurry, so I assume I moved when I was taking it, but that came out well. Millie again, sniffing around, just trying to look at the colors. Finger again. I don't understand how this happened. This is our dog Bella, standing at the edge of the pool. I do, like, just from what I can see of the blues, if my finger wasn't in this, the blues come out nicely. I love the way the water looks on this camera, which is good because it does come with this underwater housing. So if you wanted to just exclusively shoot with this camera in water, I think that would be a great idea. You can really see the blur in this photo. Yeah. This photo, I don't like compositionally, but I like how you can see how the blues come out with this camera, and I like how you can see the details of the clouds. And this is, I think, the last shot on the roll. This is a great example of the greens. You can definitely, just throughout the roll, you can tell if the brighter the photo is, the better it'll come out. But if it's a little cloudy, it won't be that bad. There's a couple things that I want to note about the camera. First, these cameras are actually marketed for kids. So on a positive note, it's very, very beginner friendly. There's only one button right here, it's the shutter button. It's very easy to load, this lever, and then you open it up and load your film there. And the shutter counter is just right here. Another thing is that it's small and light, so it's very travel friendly. I would take this camera with me on walks with my dog. That's how I got that one photo with the tree and the moon. It would fit into this little pouch I have completely fine. I honestly didn't even know it was there because it's so light, which comes back to the quality. It's not the best quality, it's completely made of plastic. But with that, I think it's a great throw around camera because you don't have to, if it drops, like I don't think it's gonna break because it's so light. And also if it does break, it's only $28. So it's not like you're carrying around a nice Canon camera with an expensive lens that like you're protecting with your life. I would have no trouble throwing this in a beach bag and like taking it to the beach. Really, my only negative comment would be how the build of the camera and the cheapness of it sometimes made it seem like it wasn't working. So the shutter button would seem like it got stuck, or the advanced lever wouldn't actually move the dial forward. But my photos ended up coming out great. I just think you need to be aware that it is a very cheaply built camera and it will feel that way. As a closing remark, I want to say that I know I could have bought a Kodak camera for $20 more, and I probably will end up doing so soon. But I am happy that I found an inexpensive camera I could easily take with me to the beach and not be worried about if I want to try a shot underwater, a shot in the sand, anything where a camera that's more vintage would make me hesitant to take it somewhere. Thanks for watching, and I do want to shout out Reform Film Lab for developing my photos. If you want to develop a roll, I highly recommend that you check them out.